Peace and welcome. Today we have a popular riff. I have heard this on many different songs, games, and even some movies, and we will go through them in order of release. So with no further delay, here is Oddly Familiar episode 52. Our first up today comes from a song titled Tic-Tac Nocturne by Bernard Estardy. So this may not be the very first song to use this riff, but it's the first one that I have found. If you know any previously released songs, let us know and we will include it in a future episode. Bernard Estardy was a French musician born on September 19, 1939, and he passed away on September 16, 2006. The album this song comes from is titled Electro Sounds Volume 2, released in 1973. Some may recognize this as a sample from a song by the Chemical Brothers, but we will get to that later on. This album, Electro Sounds Volume 2, is relatively short. There are a total of 9 tracks that have a runtime of around 30 minutes. In 1973 that may have been normal, but nowadays I think people want more. Maybe we are just spoiled these days. Up next, we have a song by Alice Cooper, titled Steven, and released in 1975. So here we have a familiar riff, but this time it's on a piano. Coming from the Alice Cooper album titled Welcome to My Nightmare, and when played in sequence, the songs form a journey through the nightmares of a child named Steven. Steven is a fictional character created by Alice Cooper, and he appears on 8 studio albums. Steven's first appearance was on this album, Welcome to My Nightmare. Steven's mind is severely damaged. He lives in a constant nightmare, and we are guided through this nightmare by the curator played by Vincent Price. I'm not a big fan of this song because Alice Cooper is trying to sound like a little kid, and it's just not for me. However, I do like the riff and the music. Next up, we have our first movie on the list, The Fog. This movie was released in 1980 with the soundtrack released in 1984. An expanded edition of the soundtrack was released in 2000 through Silva Screen Records, containing an extra 6 tracks not included on the original release, with one of them being an interview with Jamie Lee Curtis, one of the stars of the movie. The Fog was directed by John Carpenter, and the music was composed and performed by John Carpenter. Needless to say, he was a busy man. He has directed quite a few movies, including one of my favorites, Big Trouble in Little China. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. It doesn't take itself too seriously, it has comedy, action, and it's worth a watch. This one was commented by a viewer, so quick shout out for mentioning The Fog. Our next entry comes from an Italian movie named The House by the Cemetery, a theme titled I Remember. The plot of the movie revolves around a series of murders taking place in a New England home, a home which happens to be hiding a gruesome secret within its basement walls. I won't spoil the movie for anyone, so let's just focus on the facts. Released on August 14, 1981, it has a running time of 86 minutes with a budget of 600 million lira, which was the currency of Italy between 1861 and 2002. This particular theme was composed by Walter Rizzati, who was sometimes credited as Walter Ritz or Walt Ritz. He mainly composed for movies, and you can find 23 credits to his name. Next, we have a movie titled Exterminator 2. Definitely not the most popular movie on the list. I only just watched it recently within the past 2 years. And this is the last movie you will see on our list today. Released in 1984 and written and directed by Mark Buntsman. Starring Robert Ginty and Mario Van Peebles. It gets 4.5 stars out of 10 according to IMDb, and that's probably a little bit generous. But that's because of these 145 people who gave it a 10 out of 10. I would be interested to know what it takes to be below a 10 according to those people who gave it a perfect score. The riff makes an appearance. It's changed up a little bit, but you can hear it near the beginning of the movie during the opening credits, about 90 seconds into the movie. Next up is held by the first video game we found with the riff, Dragon Warrior on the NES, the castle theme. This game was first released in 1986 in Japan under the name Dragon Quest. It was known as Dragon Warrior in North America all the way up until 2005. Only then was it finally changed to match the original name. If the characters look familiar, it's because the artist on the game is none other than Akira Toriyama. You may know some of his work from Chrono Trigger and some of his more popular work from Dragon Ball. The music in the game was composed by Koichi Sugiyama. And if you have played any Dragon Quest game at all, you have heard his work. The first Dragon Quest game actually has 2 themes that share this riff. It's not only in the castle theme, but also in the throne room theme. Now, Nemesis 2, coming from the original sounds of the MSX. Released for the MSX computer in 1987 by Konami. This game is a sequel to Nemesis, the MSX version of Gradius, but it's unrelated to the arcade game Gradius 2. This version was ported to the X68000 computer under the name Nemesis 90 Kai, which includes 2 new stages exclusive to this version of the game. The X68000 port is essentially an enhanced remake of Nemesis 2 on par with Gradius 3. This was also ported to mobile phones in 2006 and Sony PSP in 2007 as part of the Salamander Portable Collection. For now, we will play the X68000 version for you. It's close to being the same as the MSX version, but you can hear minor upgrades. Our first and only SNES game on the list today comes from Mega Man 7. The Shade Man theme. This one was submitted by Quantum X. When I shared the melody on our Discord, he gave me this entry. It may not be the exact same, but there are some similarities. First released in 1995, this was the first game in the series to be on the Super Nintendo. Composed and arranged by Toshihiko Horiyama, a Capcom composer who has worked on a bunch of different Mega Man games as well as some Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games. Our next up comes from Kingsfield 2 for the PS1. With the first Kingsfield only being released in Japan, when this game was released in the United States, it was released as Kingsfield. So English audiences may see this and think of Kingsfield 1. And this is correct, however, this is actually the second game in the series. Developed by From Software and first released in 1995 in Japan and 1996 in North America. Up next, we have the song Black Diamond by the Finnish power metal band Stratovarius. Coming from their 1997 album titled Visions, their 6th studio album. In 2005, the album was ranked number 297 in Rock Hard Magazine's book of the 500 greatest rock and metal albums of all time. Loudwire named the album its 6th in their list top 25 power metal albums of all time, and Metal Hammer named the album in their list top 10 essential power metal albums. Needless to say, this album was very well received. Up next comes from the Korean hip-hop group Drunken Tiger and their song Drunken Symphony. Coming from the second DT album titled The Great Rebirth. We have talked about this album before when they sampled a theme from Final Fantasy VII. I am into many different styles of music, and this is my favorite Korean hip-hop group. When I heard this riff and wanted to put this video together, this was the first song that popped into my mind. I remember when this album came out, as I have been a fan for over 20 years. Shout out to Tiger JK and former member DJ Shine, the #1 Korean. And now Yngwie Malmsteen, Baroque&Roll. Excuse me if I pronounced his name wrong. He is a Swedish musician, and I am not Swedish, so I did my best. Anyways, this album comes from his 14th studio album titled Attack, which is impressive in itself. Not many musicians can say they have released 14 albums, and it was released in 2002, so since then he has released 6 more albums, totaling 20 studio albums in a career spanning over 40 years. Something any musician would be proud to say. And now we have reached the Chemical Brothers' My Elastic Eye. So as we stated earlier, this one is a sample. coming from our very first submission in the video, Tic-Tac Nocturne by Bernard Estardy. This one isn't just similar, it's the exact same but with some added percussions. This Chemical Brothers song comes from their 2002 album titled Come With Us. They are a British electronic music duo composed of Tom Rowlands and Ed Simmons. Not Blood Brothers, just Chemical Brothers. Now we come to the infamous Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 soundtrack, a theme titled Muscle Tower. So, our favorite composer made the list today. And we have many comments, and there are many sources that say he got this riff from Stratovarius. But after compiling this list, can anyone say for sure that was the band he got this riff from? It could have been Alice Cooper, the Chemical Brothers, or any number of groups on our list today. Although he has used Stratovarius melodies in his music before, so it's probably safe to say he has heard their music. Either way, he paid the price and was fired. And don't get me wrong, I am not celebrating nor happy he was fired. The man has a life, a family, and a career. I'm sure he wouldn't have borrowed the riff if he knew he was going to lose his job over it. Up next, Slash, and his song titled Anastasia, featuring Myles Kennedy. So this one was found and submitted by Bearsona11. I share some compilations with all of our patrons on our Discord to see if anyone has any entries or submissions that would fit right in. Long story short, Bearsona immediately had one, and this song by Slash featuring Myles Kennedy fits right in. Released in 2012, this comes from the second solo project studio album by Slash. Last but not least, we have Disturbed and their song titled The Sound of Silence. Released in 2015, this is the newest song on our list today, coming from the Disturbed album titled Immortalized. This is their 6th studio album, and yeah, it's not 20 like Yngwie, but 6 is still a respectable amount for any band or musician. To date, they now have 7 albums, with their latest coming in 2018. Funny part about this entry, the composer of the Dragon Ball Budokai soundtrack also borrowed from this band. So it kind of comes full circle and completes the story. So we know there are probably more songs out there that use this riff or ones that are quite similar. These are just ones that we and our patrons know about. If anyone knows more themes or songs that use one close to this, let us know and we may just include it in an upcoming Oddly Familiar episode. And if this particular melody has a name, feel free to let us know that too. Before we go, we gotta give a huge shout out to gold level patrons, Bearsona11, Quantum X, Chris Hayes, and Dimitri. I am ICC. Thanks for watching. Peace.